Good afternoon, YouTube. So this is a little corner in my garage, kind of like a little utility room. I've got my freezer right here, and actually that's part of the motivation of this little project. So yeah, this is an older freezer. I believe I purchased it in 1987. It still runs. One of the problems I guess these things run into is that the insulation breaks down over time. It gets moisture in it and just loses its insulating value. And this freezer is set up, the door and the back side are just purely insulation. The condenser coils go over the outsides. The outside of this thing, when it's running, gets very warm because of the heat, and then there's only the thickness of the insulation in the wall between the hot coils and then the inside. And anyway, this freezer uses about 2 kilowatt hours a day. It used to use about 2.5, and I put this layer of insulation here. I've got the Reflectix insulation, and then that's covering 1.5 inches of polyurethane foam. And I did that on the door and on the back side, which, like I say, don't have any coils in it. But you can't do anything about the outside because that's where it gets rid of the heat. So anyway, I've been wanting to get rid of this freezer, and I'm thinking about purchasing a chest freezer instead of an upright. And while I'm getting a new freezer, instead of having an AC powered freezer, I want to pick up one of these DC freezers. I'm looking at the Sunstar 8 cubic foot chest freezer, and it runs off of 12 or 24 volt DC, automatically switches. Part of the motivation for doing that is that this freezer, like I said, uses about 2 kilowatt hours a day. The DC chest freezer uses about half a kilowatt hour, and my refrigerator, which is in the kitchen, uses about 1.4 kilowatt hours a day. So if I get rid of this, which I've been powering off of solar power for quite a number of years now, and replace it with a DC freezer, I now have enough energy. I can run my refrigerator off of solar plus the freezer. So that's part of the motivation of getting rid of this guy. It's getting pretty old. Like I say, it still runs, but it's an energy hog, basically. Like I say, I've got to keep the top open, so I've put this wire shelf up here where I store, I've got just some random parts, some of the parts for the business. I have a lot of hardware stored over here on the side, different bolts and nuts and washers. But if I put the chest freezer in here, I can't put anything on top of the chest freezer because you've got to open the door to get into it. So again, the chest freezer will be down low, and then I've got all this wasted space up here. So I've been thinking about building a cabinet up here in this corner, and let me show you what I'm going to use to make that cabinet. Okay, so last spring we got a shipment of machined parts in for the business, and it came in this kind of prefabricated crate. So there was this bottom piece here that was screwed down onto a shipping pallet. All the panels are the same. They've got a 1/2 inch OSB over here, and then they've got a 3/4 inch thick wooden brace. So the way this was built, there was the bottom, there's the top, and then there were 2 longer sides and 2 shorter sides. So they're all 20 1/4 tall. And let's see, the longer one was 35 inches. And then these other sides here were 34.5. So anyway, that goes together to make a shipping crate. So what I want to do is use these pieces to make my cabinet. I want as big a cabinet as I can make out of this wood, so that's one goal. And part of that goal is I want to cut as little as possible off of this wood in order to make the biggest volume. So the way I think I can do it is, if I take this 34.5, I can use that to come out from the wall to build the side of the cabinets. And then I'll build 2x2 frame against the wall or onto the wall. And then this guy can go in the 32 by 35 as a middle shelf, and it'll be 35 wide and 32 deep. Now this one is 34.5 deep, so this middle shelf will be a little bit short. And then the trick is, I think I can get by with one cut here. If I cut this piece down to 35 inches here, so this piece will end up being 34.5 by 35. This one is 35 wide, and then I can use these two 35-inch pieces here as the door on the cabinet. So I'll have two doors, a middle shelf, a bottom shelf, and that'll give me a huge volume because these will be roughly 9 square feet of shelf space times 2 with about 20-inch depth. Okay, so working on the cabinet pieces here, and I got the stiffener off there. These were glued and stapled. You can see some of the OSB here got shredded up. It pulled a lot of the staples through the OSB. So that's why I wanted to get this stick off before I did any cutting, just so I had the leverage to pry this thing off. And then I want to reuse it down here once I cut the OSB down. And so I've got it marked here. So that's going to be where the bottom of the board is. I need to take these two pieces off because one of them has a staple right where I want to cut. So I figure, again, take the wood off before I do any cutting. Let's see what this one. They probably put some polyurethane glue in there. Cut off a little piece there, so I'm only losing 2.5 inches of OSB, and everything else will be recycled. And then I add 2 more pieces of wood, 2 8-foot 1x3s, a couple of hinges, a couple of hangers, and it's ready to go. So I'll show you what it looks like maybe after I get it painted. We can look at all the pieces. So stay tuned for that video, and as always, thanks for watching.